You are listening to the 2 and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
I knew where you were going with it, and I had to shoot that down right away. Because the plan was for us to get, if we weren't married by 30, we were going to get married just for the tax breaks.
You know what, man? I expected more from the tax breaks. It's not all it's cracked up to be.
Grab some poutine and a double-double. It's time for the 2 and Out CFL podcast.
Now they have to kick it out, and they do!
Every week, Travis Currah.
Does anybody still care about this podcast?
And Brazilian Ty.
Hunters are people, too.
Talk fantasy football, bring you the latest in CFL news, and sprinkle in a little bit of nonsense.
Are you kidding? This is unbelievable!
Ready, set, hunt!
And we are a part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. Happy 2019, Brazilian Ty. Did you make it to midnight on New Year's Eve?
Oh, yeah. It was a little rough.
You went all out? I'd be disappointed if you didn't.
On New Year's Day. It was very rough on New Year's Day, needless to say. I don't know if anybody else listens to Spit and Chicklets, but we decided to drink some Pink Whitneys, which is basically just pink lemonade and vodka.
Ooh, and that reminds me of the old pink drink at Taylor Field.
to quote Ryan from Horseman when we were at Grey Cup, "Ooh, that's dangerous," was spoken a couple times, and then I decided to drink 15 Bud Lights and then fall flat on my ass as we left the house party. And I spent $20 at 7-Eleven, and we stayed up till 4 a.m. playing YouTube roulette at my place. So
$20, that's the only part I'm disappointed about.
Well, they didn't have much left.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I could. That's forgivable.
In the Huddle with Currah and Ty on the 2 and Out podcast.
I made it to midnight. What did I do? I drank probably 2 liters of Coke, ate probably 2 pounds of Chinese food, and a family-sized bag of chips for some chips and dip. The old herb and spice. What do you go with when you get the dip?
Onion, French onion, or whatever it is. Hell of a good, though. It's
There's
gotta be
both. There's French onion and onion. It's kind of intimidating. Like, which one do you choose?
I don't know. I just pick. As long as it's hell of a good and not the Philly one, then we're all good.
So I'll be honest, I went for the Philly, but the hell of a good stuff, it's good and it's cheaper. The first time I had the hell of a good was actually at a Grey Cup. They set up outside of the stadium and they had free dip.
That sounds like the perfect Grey Cup.
Oh, absolutely. And I really don't know where to start to recap all of the news that has happened so far in 2019. Let's start with the
Milan Lucic scored a goal last night. I mean, that's pretty big.
Holy crap.
Yeah. So if that streak ends, there's going to be other ones that got to end at some point, right?
I mean, if Lucic can score, Tyrell's dry spell's got to be coming to an end.
What am I doing wrong?
Can Ty score?
I've been known to tuck a few biscuits in the basket in rec league. Or is that not what we're talking about here?
Where are you now?
About 90 kilometers south of Grand Prairie-ish. So literally the middle of nowhere. We woke up this morning as we were leaving camp, leaving the boot room. There's a big sign on the door. Hey, there was a cougar kicking around here last night. And not like it was an actual feline, like an actual cougar. Don't get any ideas. Hey, be on the lookout. I was like, oh, that's awesome. We're going to go in the bush with no cell service and walk through thigh or waist deep snow and just hope we don't get eaten.
Why didn't you just try your bullfighting strategy? Stay below them so they're not threatened.
Because I have a feeling that would just make it easier for them to eat me.
Well, let's talk about, I guess, the mass exodus of players down to the NFL. I'm just going to name them off. Deontay Spencer goes to the Steelers. Mark and Michelle goes to the Eagles. Actually, the Eagles are very busy in signing CFL players. They also take Alex Singleton and Mercy Maston of the Eskimos. James Vaughters of the Stamps goes to the Bears. Jameer Thurman goes to the Bears. Sam Aguavin heads to the Dolphins. Jake Seresna of the Eskimos goes to the Giants. Bryant Mitchell to the Cardinals, Duke Williams to the Bills, Tavon Campbell to the Jets, Ty Long to the Chargers. I don't know if we've ever seen this many guys all at once make the exit and head down to the NFL. I know that teams are now allowed to release guys from their contract to head to the National Football League, so that plays a part of it. But it's not like there's much certainty with the CBA up here as well, so there's not really much of a reason to stick around at this point.
No, and those two factors, and with the new league, the American Alliance Football, I mean, they're taking players that would normally, have NFL interest, so the NFL is going to be looking other places, so that's going to be some of it. And a lot of these guys are, like, you look at guys like Alex Singleton and Deontay Spencer, Duke Williams, like, Duke Williams is a big guy. Like, he'll be fine, if he gets a fair shot, unlike we saw with Darrell Walker in Tampa, who had, I think, 2 targets in the preseason, and he was back. These guys excel in the CFL, and if they're able, they might only be special teamers maybe for the first year or two, but if they're able to show something, they could stick with a team and carve out a new career in the NFL for sure.
Yeah, and in the same breath, you see something like Tavon Campbell, where I'm not going to call him a bad player, but I wouldn't call him a top. He's not an all-star in the CFL, but he's fast and he's got speed. In the NFL, they like those measurables. So I mean, I don't know how much of a shot he does have with the Jets, but he's taking his shot in the States, and you can't fault them for it, but that's kind of what NFL teams look at sometimes. They just look at what you look like on paper, and if you can't run a 40 this fast or you don't have this much height, well, they don't look at you. But there are a lot of guys that are getting shots. I don't know how many of them are legit shots. If these guys end up just being training camp bodies next year, I don't know. But I wish all of them the best. I feel like guys like Aguavin and Singleton and Duke Williams probably have the best shot. And, I mean, Ty Long, he had a hell of a year punting for the Lions. So
the Chargers can't keep a kicker for more than 3 games, so he might end up being their Pro Bowl selection.
Well, look at some of the kicking performances in the NFL.
Oh, poor Chris Parkey.
It's like the story of the league right now, the missed field goals. It's crazy.
Consistently inconsistent.
So good luck to all these guys. There's one name that we're kind of waiting on, and that is Bo Levi Mitchell. The CFL meetings are happening basically as we record in Mont-Tremblant, Quebec, and John Hufnagel.
I love how you say Quebec. Just Quebec. It's not Quebec or Quebec. It's Quebec.
It's Quebec.
It's so Anglophone. It's unreal.
Well, I have the worst accent of all time. So I've been doing...
I think your old co-host might have the worst accent of all time.
Okay, yeah, he's definitely a consideration. But I was exposed over the Christmas break. I did some announcing for the volleyball team here at the college, and they were playing a Quebec team. Oh, I was a mess.
Guy Lafleur.
Hey, if they had hockey names, I did okay. But everything else, the name of the school, I remember they came and they had to spell it out for me on how to pronounce the. Oh, I just absolutely blew it.
Do you mean phonetically?
Well, basically, they came and I said, "How do you say it?" And they said it, and I said, "What?"
Pourquoi?
It was an absolute mess. But where I was trying to go is that John Hufnagel has said, or he's basically told Bo Levi Mitchell that they need an answer as to what he's going to do before free agency. And that is February 12th, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, I guess noon Eastern, when free agency officially opens in the CFL. So I think we're going to be learning about Bo Levi Mitchell's fate sooner rather than later. He worked out with almost half the NFL in December, it seemed like.
Yeah, and Huffnagel giving him an ultimatum or a deadline is completely fair. He's got a team to run. He needs to know if Bo is going to be taking that shot or, going to be coming back. So he's got to put a football team on the field and have a viable quarterback. Don't know what Nick Arbuckle really is. I could see that if come February 12th, if Bo decides, no, I'm going to take my shot, Calgary could be in the market for some guys, and maybe not free agent wise, but I mean trades and everything. We could see a vastly different quarterback setup in the CFL. Not just with one or two teams, but for a lot of guys, just with the way free agency has gone and with the CBA, like we said, almost everybody was a free agent coming into this offseason anyways. Well,
the way we sit right now, only 3 teams in the league look like they know what they're doing at quarterback going into the year. The Bombers are going to have Nichols. The Owls are going to have Manziel, unless they could trade him. You never know. And the Ticats have Mazzoli. So that's the only situation only situations that seem to be settled right now.
And Zach Collaros is still signed through this season, is he not? But that doesn't mean Saskatchewan knows what they're doing with their quarterbacks.
They might be better off with no quarterback.
Yeah, just run the Wildcat with Marshall.
Why not?
It works inside the 3. Why can't it work from our own 3 and march down the field?
Exactly. So despite the collective bargaining agreement not being set up and not being finished, some players are signing extensions, and the Bombers have actually been pretty busy. Justin Medlock signs for another 2 years. And it was interesting. Last offseason, it was kind of touch and go with him. He wasn't sure if he was going to even come back. But they get him for another 2 years after he had himself a nice season, as he always does. Jake Thomas, the defensive tackle, re-ups in Winnipeg. The fullback, John Rush. He's without that hair, isn't he, though?
Yeah, but have you seen his dog?
Yeah, you're in love with that dog, and you don't strike me like much of a dog person.
Bone looks so cool. Like, of course, Rush is going to sign an extension because that dog is going to eat him out of house and home. So he needs all the money he can get. Money. Bone is the only reason I follow him on Twitter now. Sorry, but.
So what's your ratio? If he goes 3 tweets without talking about Bone, unfollowed?
I haven't seen a tweet where it's not about his dog.
Oh, okay.
So it's perfect. Since he got the dog.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Long snapper Chad Rempel re-signs, but this one was a little bit surprising, I think. Wednesday evening, we get news that Chris Randall, defensive back, has been in Winnipeg for 5 years, was in Calgary for 2 years before that, has been released. Of course, he is on the wrong side of 30. I'm on the wrong side of 30. You're on the wrong side of 30. But I didn't mean to remind you, but I didn't think Randall would be looking for a job at this point.
No, it's a little surprising. He like the wrong side of 30. He is 30, so it's not.
That's
like
the wrong side.
It's not like it's the end of the world. Well, it's not. 17 games last year. 57 tackles. He's not your premier DB, but he gets the job done. And the way that defense has been playing the last couple of years, I don't know why you would mess with that. Like 2 interceptions, I didn't know fumble recovers or anything, and he's still, 52 tackles, 57 if you count his special teams. So I wouldn't want to meddle too much with that defense. Maybe they know something we don't, or maybe they saw something that they didn't like where he's starting to decline. But if I'm not mistaken, looking at his previous years, he's just as good as he was in 2017. So, less interceptions, and he doesn't have the TDs. But I mean, the tackles are still up there, sacks and everything. he's dependable. So I don't know. They must know something. It could be money. There's a lot of variables that can come into it. It's just very surprising, like you said.
The Argos end up extending Qdarius Ford, and according to Jim Popp, they're taking a wait-and-see approach with Ricky Ray. I find it a bit curious that he hasn't made an official decision yet. I kind of feel like if he was going to retire, he would have done so already.
I think he still wants to play. I think it's going to come down to training camp when he actually gets to start taking reps again and, gets hit a little bit and see just how he feels. Because like what he went through this start in week 2 and from then on was just, you hate to see it. And it was a freak injury, but I mean, when it's head and neck, you got to take all the precautions you can. So I think he wants to play, but he's kind of playing the wait and see game and see how he feels. Whether or not Toronto is willing to, take a chance on that in training camp is another thing.
The Alouettes are going to have another quarterback on their sidelines for training camp, and that is a Canadian quarterback, Hugo Richard. Played for Laval, ended up winning 2 Vanier Cups there. I mean, I feel like a monkey could win Vanier Cups with Laval, but he did, and I just think it's cool to see a Canadian quarterback back into the league and hopefully have another shot. I mean, if he's got a shot anywhere, it's probably in Montreal.
That's a pretty safe bet, yes.
Is that the first Montreal Swear Jar edition of 2019? Holy crap.
That's your toonie, not mine.
My toonie. That's a good old large double-double right down the toilet.
Oh,
Thanks,
man. It's $3 for a bottle of Coke here in camp.
Really?
Yeah, I still pay it, though.
I thought they would supply you guys with Coke.
No.
And that's not an oil field joke.
Well, no, when you first said it, I was like, well, I'm pretty sure I could find some. But
if you just stood in the hallway and yelled, does anybody have any Coke? Do you think? How long would it take?
Depends on which hallway you're in. Depends on what dorm you go to. The further away you get from the kitchen, the shadier it gets.
The upstanding characters are close to the kitchen?
I am in dorm C. So it's like, basically living south of 36th Street in Lloyd. Or like, so anything past me, you get a little closer to Highway 16. If you're in like H or J, you're basically up by Tate's liquor store on the north end, and you don't want to be there.
I bet you about 3 people that know Lloyd are listening to this, but
That's
you don't
fine.
want to be on the north end. That's all you need to know.
Where I grew up by the movie theater.
Is the north end of every city crappy?
Edmonton, yes. Well, no. Edmonton, it depends on where you are. And like, if you come in from Fort Sask on Highway 15, it's really nice. But if you get around Rexall, it's a dump.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. The north end of Marshall isn't bad. It's right on the highway.
The north end of Marshall. 1,500 people live there.
Lashburn, the north end, has the golf course, so there's that.
Is any major city have a good north end? Winnipeg? No. Regina? No.
North Van isn't bad.
There we go.
Said
North
no
Van.
one ever. Yeah, it's no East Hastings, but
oh, this is the best podcast we've ever recorded. Just
that's
crapping
not
on
saying
everyone.
much. Yeah.
Where were we?
North side of Ottawa is not bad because if you go a little bit further north, you end up in Hull.
North side of Ottawa is not bad. You're right.
Maybe that's just a
never
Western not
thing.
a good time.
Maybe it's a prairie thing. North side is good nowhere. Although I'm pretty sure you got your Brazilian in the north side of Winnipeg.
Like old downtown. That was scary.
Kenny Shaw will not be back in Saskatchewan. Kyrie Zebair will not be back in Ottawa. So teams are making decisions, and the CBA is not done. There's also been a lot of moves in the front office that we must get to. First, thank you to ATB Financial for sponsoring this podcast. I have to tell you, the amount of transactions I have done and transfers and all this stuff between December and now for Christmas and New Year's and all this stuff has been absolutely crazy. But I'm not getting slammed with extra fees. They got the all-digital checking and savings account, no monthly fee, no minimum balance, unlimited digital transactions, and Interac e-transfers. It is so nice to be with them. If you want to make the switch, you're in Alberta, atb.com, the no-fee, all-in account. Go to atb.com to learn more about that. We've talked a lot about the players. Let's transition to what's happening in the front office. I kind of want to talk about this first. Torii Hunter of the BC Lions gets suspended 90 days, and I guess this suspension happened in November, so he's already served a good amount of this suspension.
This is the greatest suspension of all time.
Basically, he had some burner accounts. And I guess it was first brought up by the Eskimos in the spring of last year because he was replying to their tweets with like some insider information that nobody would know. And I guess the investigation showed that Torii Hunter in the BC Lions front office had some burner accounts. And he's not the only person in the CFL. We know that.
Like, to actually get caught is hilarious.
Yeah, that's the funny part.
Like, we saw it in the NBA with Colangelo and his wife. They had like 4 different ones, and he got busted. Kevin Durant, Skip Bayless replying to himself on Facebook accidentally. It's like, come on, guys. You just got to be smarter about it. It's not like it's hard to pretend to be why are you giving up information that nobody else would know but you?
Yeah, that's the stupidest part.
So
what are you thinking?
It's man. It's like saying that that you're somewhere, like, oh, I'm in bed, and then your girlfriend texts you, well, I'm right behind you, and you're at the bar. It's like, dude, be smarter.
Yeah, keep your head on a swivel.
Yeah, 180 degrees. Like,
so, I'll be honest. I had a burner account.
The 2-and-out account is my burner account.
Is your burner account? No, I don't use my burner account for negative purposes anymore. I used to. But I wasn't really good at it because I got my own personal account blocked by CFL players. But this is 5 years ago, so don't go bringing this up now. But I admit to my transgressions. I'm not going to tell you the account. It's pretty easy to figure out if you search through Twitter. But come on, what other CFL personalities have burner accounts? Because there's probably 3 or 4 dozen of them.
There has to be.
Tillman definitely has one.
Tillman probably has a fake ID so he can, get jobs.
I'm pretty sure our friend Josh Smith from Potsky Wee Wee wrote an article about this on 3 Down Nation, and I think the list begins and ends with Eric Tillman. He might have a dozen himself.
Somebody's got to praise him because nobody else is, so it might as well be himself with his burner accounts.
I think it would be my favorite CFL story of all time if it turned out Wally Buono had a burner.
Oh my God!
There is 0% that's a thing.
He doesn't even know how to use Twitter.
Yeah,
it's like if you follow Don Cherry's Twitter, it's brutal because all he does is just give a rant to a PR person. They just have to type like one of whatever.
His Twitter's hilarious because you have to click links to like get the full.
It's so bad.
Full rant. Or they'll be like in 30 different parts. Oh, I love me some
It's like,
grapes.
you know what? I'll just watch Coach's Corner and just hate you on Saturday nights. I don't need to hate you during the week.
Now, we are talking about Eric Tillman, or we were. He will not be returning as general manager in Hamilton, as Jim Barker joins the team as a football operations consultant. And then it's widely speculated that Eric Tillman is going to be joining the Schooners front office when things get underway there. So, I mean, they're off to a pretty good start. Tillman's got such a weird resume.
Name one Grey Cup team or a team that he's taken to the Grey Cup as the GM that he built.
Yeah.
This is the guy that traded Ricky Ray.
Now, I'm not going to pretend that I remember the sequence of events here, but was he the man that brought Kerry Joseph to Saskatchewan? But he was also the man that got rid of him, and Joseph went to Toronto and did nothing.
Don't forget DJ Flick.
Hey, that's a great name.
No, and it was a great pickup. But he shows up when, the team is missing one or two pieces, and he gets those pieces. He's never done it, as a build. He's like John Gruden. Just shows up, uses everybody else's assets, adds one or two pieces, and that's it.
Yeah, because I guess he was with the Renegades, and then he was probably like, you know what, that Kerry Joseph guy, let's bring him to Saskatchewan. And they ended up getting him in the dispersal draft in 2006. So,
don't get me wrong. I'm glad he did it. I'm ecstatic that the Riders got a Grey Cup in 2007 from it. But he's never proven himself as a guy that can build a football team. He shows up when the team is built and just needs a piece or two, and he finds those one or two guys that they need to get them over the hump. He comes to teams that are basically already there. So I don't know how well it would work with the Schooners, but at the same time, it would be an expansion draft, and he would have entire rosters to pick from, and he knows the league well enough. I just don't know how the build would go with him in charge.
And it was such a weird situation in Hamilton. Like, he became the GM, but they tried to do it so quietly, so people almost didn't. Like, it was.
I wonder why that is.
Yeah, I know why. It's the whole incident in Regina, but it was. They were basically saying that Kent Austin was the GM, and then Tillman kind of weaseled his way in there, but we're not going to talk about it. We're still going to call Kent Austin the GM, and then all of a sudden,
the president of football ops, and there's a whole schmozzle.
So hey, maybe he is the Schooners guy in the near future, and hopefully sooner rather than later that we hear from the Schooners. And staying with Hamilton, they've announced the rest of their front office. Mark Washington's going to be their DC, and it does look like Jeff Reinbold is going to be returning to Hamilton after being let go in BC when that new staff came in with Devon Claybrooks and others. Let's shift to the Eskimos front office. Philip Lawley has been named their defensive coordinator, and I know some Eskimo fans are going to be happy regarding some names that have ended up on the coaching staff list for the Eskimos, namely AJ Gass. I know a lot of Esks fans are excited about that.
All I remember is the 2005 Grey Cup when he took an intentional offside penalty because his team wasn't set, and they ended up winning, and it just pissed me off more because I was cheering for Montreal. Or was that 2003, whatever, Machocha's rookie year, because I just couldn't stand Danny Machocha. And so, total veteran move, great move, got his team regrouped and everything, but that's why I hated him so much, is because he was so good.
Because he was so good. So he's going to be their special teams guy. I would like to see Jason Moss get in his face.
Ooh. since, I'm pretty sure he'd put up more of a fight than the Gatorade bottle, and that Gatorade bottle stood in there for 12 rounds.
That Gatorade bottle, it was rope-a-dope Ali all the way, man.
It was like Homer just getting punched and just waiting for the guy to tire himself out against Frederick Tatum. Speaking of the Eskimos front office, remember when they released Rob Ralph?
Yes.
So he sent a tweet. This would have been last month. I texted it to you. We haven't done a show since it came out. He threw some shade at the Eskimos front office.
He did, yep.
And I thought it was awesome. And, then former players of the Eskimos, came on Twitter and happened to agree with him and had some names that they called Glenn Rhodes. And, but like to release guys and not like there was no, and we talked about how there was no comment or anything from the team. It just seemed really weird. And then him doing this now just means that, maybe, I don't know. It just seems like maybe the relationship soured by the end of it, and maybe both, or maybe the team just wanted to totally cut ties. I don't know. I thought it was hilarious, though.
Yeah. Anytime people throw shade on Twitter, I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, I just want to grab my popcorn.
That's exactly what all the GIFs are for. Yes, I think it's GIFs, but I'll say GIFs to make both sides of the coin happy for that one.
Why don't we ask the GIF king?
Oh, Zach Evans, what does he say?
Yes. What does he say? Because I know the guy who created them says it's supposed to be pronounced GIF, but it's graphic image whatever. So it's a hard G, so it's GIF. Like, let's not kid ourselves.
If the guy that creates it says GIF, it's GIF.
No, it's not graphic, it's graphic, so it's a hard G. But whatever Zach says to call it, we'll call it from now on.
You will call it. I'll say exactly the opposite of what he says.
No, we're not talking about how to spell pierogi. We're talking about how to pronounce a word. Happy belated Ukrainian Christmas, by the way.
Yes, sir. Happy belated Ukrainian Christmas, my friend. John Murphy, who left the Saskatchewan Roughriders after saying, hey, I don't want to take a pay cut. It's speculated that he will end up in Toronto with Jim Popp and Corey Chamberlain and company. So suddenly they got a bit of a nice little front office in Toronto. And his former team, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, extend Chris Jones through 2020, as well as Jeremy O'Day. There were some sort of rumors that NFL teams were looking at Chris Jones and bringing him down there. I don't know what position or in what capacity, but he does sign the extension in Saskatchewan. He does say that he has unfinished business there, but the team has gotten better since he signed there, and you're going to have to deal with your favorite coach for the next at least 2 years, Ty.
Yeah, his contract extension means absolutely nothing, as we've seen in the past. He will leave if he gets an option. If he gets an opportunity, so it doesn't really matter. I hate him as a football coach, love him, or not love him, but I don't mind the way that he is able to get what he does out of his players. I just don't like the decisions he makes in the management of a game. But yeah, he left Edmonton when he was under contract. The extension means literally nothing. He'll be there this year. If he gets an opportunity in the NFL, he'll be gone. I'm sure of it. O'Day, we talk about it. Continuity in the front office is so huge in professional sports, and it trickles down. If you have consistency and continuity in your front office, it trickles down to your coaching staff, which trickles down to your roster, your players, and you see what they have in Calgary with the Stampeders. That front office has been together. Whether it was Huffnagel, even when Huffnagel was on the sidelines, he was still the GM. They've just been the picture of perfection for a CFL franchise, getting guys in who nobody's ever heard of, because they have that network and they have that continuity. Granted, they probably had 30 scouts. Now that'll change with the cap, but to have those guys locked up is huge. And like in Toronto, continuity we knew would be an issue, especially with the way the draft went a couple of years ago when they went through free agency and everything without a GM and without a head coach. Having Pop there with Chamberlain and now John Murphy, if he ends up there, if that group can stay together, there's a lot of experience in that front office too, and it could be good for the Argos not only on the field but off the field. If they can get something going with ticket sales or anything like that, Pop's been around long enough that he might have some ideas. That could be huge for that franchise as well.
There's a lot happening at the CFL meetings this week in Quebec. Rule changes have been proposed. We'll see what the GMs and the Rules Committee comes up with. I'm sure we're going to be hearing a lot more news over the next couple of weeks, and it's been an impressive offseason so far for the CFL. I think one of the criticisms is that things go silent, and I really don't think the news has stopped since after Grey Cup. It has been absolutely nonstop, and I mean that's part of what Ambrosie's trying to do here. He calls it a business season in the offseason. At these meetings, they announced that the CFL is committing over $4 million to amateur football in Canada, but he has also come up with the CFL 2.0, wants to go international, and that all starts actually this Sunday. It is January, the 13th in Mexico City. Apparently, there's going to be at least 2 representatives from every CFL team, and there's going to be a combine with 51 Mexican players down there, and every team is going to be able to pick 4 of them. It's not really clear right now in what capacity they're going to be on rosters, if they're going to straight up go to the CFL team, if they're going to be on sort of an international nag list or something like that. But the combine's happening on Sunday, and teams are going to be able to pick players starting Monday. This has all happened, I feel like, quite fast, and I can't really see anything bad happening out of this.
No, it's exposure. You're giving more. It may be creating more jobs. Do they expand rosters if they're gonna add 4 draft picks? Are the rosters going to expand a little bit, which could create jobs, which the PA will like? They're a union, jobs are good, and the international exposure, like I said, the big thing, ticket sales and attendance isn't where it used to be. It is on a little bit of a decline, here and there. It's a roller coaster. But the more eyes you can get on the league, whether it's going to be this draft and, somebody gets drafted from the Mexico Combine, and they end up playing in the league, well, now you're going to have a whole nother country who might be a little more interested in the CFL because they're going to want to watch, guys from their hometown or their country play professional football, which could be a huge asset for the CFL.
And I'm just assuming there's got to be some just great athletes all over the world, and this is a start to, start attracting these players to the CFL. So I'm interested to see where this goes and, how much we get to see from these players, either from this combine or, in the future, if they're going to have a spot at training camp and things like that. I mean, there's athletes all over the world, and some of them just don't get the chance to show what they can do. So I think this is a really awesome thing. And talking about combines, the one has happened in Canada every March during CFL week over the past 2 years. One in Winnipeg, one in Regina. But now with the uncertainty of the CBA, it looks like it was tentatively supposed to be in Ottawa, the CFL week, but that has been kiboshed, and I get it. Mm-hmm. How can they expect all these players of the CFL to show up when all of the off-season bonuses have been taken away? Why would they do anything extra if they're not getting paid for anything right now?
You sound like me.
You're not getting paid? Oh, you mean the podcast?
Yeah, why would I do any extra?
Hey, I sent you an e-transfer the other day.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, ATB. But it looks like CFL week is not going to happen this year. Obviously, the combine's still going to happen. The draft is still going to happen. But I don't know if it's going to have the same coverage as it has the past two seasons. I hope it does. Guys like Marshall Ferguson do amazing work to cover the draft class every year.
Dwayne Ford.
But hopefully the draft, gets just as much attention this season in the cloud of the CBA uncertainty.
Well, and by the time the draft hits, the CBA might be ratified. It might be done. We don't I haven't heard anything from Mount Tremblant on Twitter or nothing or anything like that to see how things are going. If everything's done and good to go, I think the draft coverage will be the same. It'll be a little different without the CFL week, just in terms of people around. I think, but at the same time, the draft is going to go with or without a CBA. We've seen it in all the other leagues happen as well. When they don't have CBAs and they lock out players, they still have their drafts. Teams are still going to be the CFL draft is super important because you need to draft the team with the good Canadian depth is usually the team that's able to win. If it doesn't have the same coverage it did last year, I mean, Twitter with Marshall Ferguson and TSN guys like Dwayne Ford, who keeps up to date on draft status and all that stuff. If you can find stuff on Twitter or on the TSN website and stuff like that, it can be a little bit easier to follow. So I don't think it'll be the same. I don't know what you would call it. The same, I don't want to say tenacity because that's just the wrong word, but like with the CFL week there, it was really, I wouldn't say overloaded, but it always seemed that you could get something. People were tweeting about it. There was a little more coverage. It might not be the same without the CBA.
We are a part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. I think we'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll have a show in 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks after that, and then all of a sudden free agency opens. And I don't know how different free agency is going to be this year if the CBA is not figured out. We might be.
I have a request to propose since free agency opens on February 12th.
Okay, and we got another wedding to attend on February 16th.
Yeah. So maybe for the second time in 2-0 history, I'm not saying live show.
Live in Lloydminster.
We might be able to record in the same room.
Live in Lloydminster. We need a venue.
Yeah, well, the Vic Juba. No. Bo Diddleys. We'll go to Bo's. Or we could do it at the wedding reception.
Hey, that'd be fun. I don't know if anybody would listen, but I'd have fun.
Yeah, it's not about them.
Shout out to two new podcasts joining the Alberta Podcast Network. The Read Along, actually hosted by a husband and wife team of Scott and Anita. This is really cool. It's kind of like a mini book club for your ears. With a married couple, I cannot imagine doing a podcast with my wife. Well, I mean, you and I are kind of a married couple.
Let's not start that. I knew where you were going with it, and I had to shoot that down right away. Because the plan was for us to get, if we weren't married by 30, we were going to get married just for the tax breaks.
You know what, man? I expected more from the tax breaks. It's not all it's cracked up to be.
I expected to not be single at 30, but here we are.
Although, if you would have married me before they made the tax changes with income splitting, I really don't want to get into this in the podcast. But that would really have benefited us because you probably make triple that I make. So that
we would have been well off.
We would have been. You're totally right. Also, otherwise. And I don't know how they feel about getting shouted out after that conversation. But otherwise, is a variety podcast dedicated to empowering diverse communities living in Treaty 6 territory. So many great podcasts. And it just goes to show because, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 podcasts in the Alberta Podcast Network are all nominees in the Canadian Podcast Awards. So check out all the shows at albertapodcastnetwork.com.
I have a feeling we are not one of those 6.
We're not one of those 6.
Weird.
Although in the sports category, Tight Ends by Vanda, just an absolutely amazing name for a podcast. They're nominated in the sports category. Maybe we can win one of these awards eventually. They happen February 23rd in Toronto. I'm Travis Currah. He's Brazilian Ty. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks. Happy 2019.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.